Filicide. Yet another man who kills his children. Let's talk about that. Those of us who follow true crime cases, unfortunately, are probably aware of one or probably lots of cases where a parent, a mother, a father, a biological or step-parent kills one or more of their children. We call this filicide. We could call it familicide. Familicide is a more generic term whereby a member of a family kills other members of a family, so it could be a parent killing a child. However, I tend to use familicide more generically when a family member kills more than one generation, so it might be a spouse and a child or children. Filicide is where you kill your son or daughter. So I'm using the term filicide in this video, and what has sparked this particular video today is the case that's in the news at the moment, and that is the case of Chad Doman. And this happened on Thursday, so 4 days ago as I record this video. And this 32-year-old man from Ohio lined up his 3 little boys and executed them. Just executed them. Ages 3, 4 and 7 years of age. In front of their mother, his 16-year-old stepdaughter ran screaming down the road for help. An absolutely dreadful, dreadful situation. He's in jail now. He didn't fight his arrest at all. Very peculiar. You know, he was just so calm and collected, sitting on his step waiting for the cops. And yeah, he's in jail on a $20 million bond, and he has confessed. So hopefully he pleads guilty. He's next in court on the 26th of June of this month for his preliminary hearing. I hope he pleads guilty and just, you know, takes his punishment. Doesn't try to worm his way out of it, as many of these people do. But Chad Doman is just the latest in a long line of child killers. And we think of these people as absolute monsters, and they are. They are. But there's various types of filicide. I'm very interested from a psychological point of view in cases like Chad Doman, where there was absolutely, on the face value at least, no warning signs. Now, this is a very new case. There might be a lot we don't know at this moment in time. But there are various reasons, motivations, why parents kill their children. So I'm going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to look at the prevalence of it in the United States. I'm using US statistics because Chad's case is American, but this goes on all over the world. So we're going to look at prevalence. We're going to look at the different types of filicide, and I'm going to focus on the motivations of the type of filicide that I believe Chad Doman's case is, and that is of spousal revenge. Now, at the moment, this is just my theory as to why this guy has done it. No motive has been released. I can't see any other motive, though, at all. But this case is new, so, you know, just bear that in mind as I go through this video. But this is not just about Chad Doman. This is about the many cases where parents kill their children. Now, I'm reading these statistics from the National Library of Medicine, and this was by Philip Resnick in 2016. So it's a fairly old article, honestly. However, it's got some good information. You know, just good general information that if you don't know too much about filicide, this is a good starting point. And this is about filicide in the United States. So let's look at the epidemiology of filicide. So let's read here. The United States has the highest rate of child murder amongst developed nations. There's plenty goes on in my country, in the UK, honestly. We've had a whole range of filicide cases in recent years. One that stands out to me right this moment is that of Arthur Lavigne Hughes, the little boy. He was just tortured. He was just tortured by his stepmother, and his dad was seemingly compliant in this torture. And there were warning signs. Arthur's grandma, his paternal grandma, saw the signs, reported it to social services. It was during COVID times. I don't know whether that makes a difference or not, but social services went round and they just put on a front, and he was just left there. He was left there, but there were warning signs, and there are warning signs in lots of cases. But in cases like Chad Doman's and Chris Watts, Anthony Tote, these cases are the ones that fascinate me the most. I mean, it's macabre, but I just want to understand why these people do this horrific thing. What possesses them to do this? If there's no warning signs, how can anybody, law enforcement, psychologists, how can anybody predict it? And they can't. And that's why this kind of filicide is unusual. However, it happens, and it's scary because nobody can predict when it's going to happen. About 2.5% of all homicide arrests in the United States are for parents who have killed their children. This amounts to an average of about 500 filicides arrests each year. The rate of child homicide decreases with the child's age. 90% of filicide perpetrators are biological parents and 10% are step parents. However, there are more kids that live with their biological parents than live with step parents, so you've got to kind of bear that in mind. And step parents are far more likely to kill children. In cases of child maltreatment homicides, it tends to be fathers that use more violent methods such as beating, squeezing, stabbing, shooting, whereas mothers tend to drown their kids, suffocate them, or even gas them in some situations. We could, however, pick on a recent case that's gone through the courts that defies this. And this, of course, is the case of Letitia Stauch, who brutally murdered her 11-year-old stepson Gannon. And she used a whole gamut of weapons. She struck him with a blunt force instrument. She stabbed him, and then she shot him. So when we talk about fathers being more violent than mothers, this is just a generalisation. In Chad Doman's case, he shot his kids, lined them up and executed them. One of the little boys ran for his life. Imagine the terror. And his father dragged him back to the property and shot him. So what are the motivations for this? Well, one of the types of filicide that is intriguing and perhaps is the most easy to get your head round, if any of this is you can get your head around it at all, is what we call altruistic filicide. The parent is probably undergoing some kind of psychotic episode and believes that they're acting out of love rather than anger or hate, or because this is an abusive relationship and the abuse gets so severe that the child is murdered. In some of these cases, a parent will want to end their own life but won't want to leave the children behind. So the children are murdered because the parent can't see any way forward. And about a third of mothers who kill their children also take their own life. And fathers are almost twice as likely to complete a taking their own life event after filicide. Alongside this, though, men are statistically more likely to kill an entire family, take everybody in the family out, including themselves. Family annihilation, that is taking the entire family, including their spouse, their children, and sometimes even a family pet. I think the Anthony Tote case is a good example of this. Tote was in financial ruin The family had lived a very affluent life, and Todt was struggling. He knew the law was onto him regarding medical fraud. He started to spiral out of control. The debts mounted up, and Anthony chose, instead of facing up to his issues, he decided to take the cowardly way out and kill his entire family, 3 children, his wife, and the family dog, Breezy. He said he was going to take his own life. Whether he ever intended to and then didn't have the nerve, I don't know. The bodies had been in the house at least 2 weeks, and he was found in the house after his sister actually became concerned that she'd not heard from any of the family, and a welfare check revealed the horror. Is that a form of altruistic homicide? Yeah, probably. Another case we could talk about is that of Andrea Yates. In June 2001, she drowned each of her 5 children, aged between 6 months to 7 years, in the bathtub. Her earlier life provided no clues that she would commit this crime. She was a good mother. But after her 4th child, she felt overwhelmed and depressed and became psychotic. She thought Satan wanted to kill her children. She took an overdose to try to take her own life rather than risking harming her children. The last of Andrea Yates's hospitalisations was 5 weeks before she murdered her children. She thought television adverts were referring directly to her. She had a delusion that television cameras were placed throughout her home to monitor the quality of her mothering. She truly had the belief that Satan was literally within her. And she believed her children would never be right, would lead horrendous lives because Satan, had ruined them. Her conviction was overturned, and in her second trial in 2006, the jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity. Letitia Stauch tried that particular defence, but the jury saw right through it because Letitia Stauch wasn't insane. Now, there are some cases where an acutely psychotic episode isn't filled with fears that you've ruined your children or your children are possessed by Satan. And this might include cases where a parent kills a child under the influence of a delirium. They just basically don't know they're doing it. Thankfully, those cases are rare. But there's one case reported by Smith in 2015 where a woman in Sacramento placed her infant in a microwave during a period of post-seizure confusion. She was epileptic. She'd had a seizure. She was confused. And I don't know, she placed the baby in the microwave. That's not motivated by altruism or hate or anything, by emotion at all. It's just complete and utter confusion. And of course, when that person realizes what they've done, they are absolutely horrified because they truly were not in their right mind. And in those cases, that person can be classed as insane. But horrendously, the vast majority of parents who kill their children are not insane. They are motivated by hate and anger, either towards the child itself or towards the spouse, and they kill the children to get back at their spouse. There are cases of child maltreatment where children are just dreadfully abused, and they just die from a severe battery, multiple batteries. Sometimes it can be outbursts of overzealous discipline. One case I can bring to mind here is the case of Harmony Montgomery. Now, her father, Adam, was given custody of Harmony. Why the judge chose, I can't get my head around this, guys, why the judge chose to give Adam Montgomery, a multiple felon, custody of a little girl that he hardly knew. Yes, he was her biological dad, but he hardly knew her. And she was murdered. Now, this case has not gone through court yet. He's guilty, in my opinion. He's so guilty. And she was beaten to death and her body has never been found. There are cases where children are just unwanted and are dispatched because the parents don't want them. They just dispose of them. Now, could we say that the case of Orrin and Orson West, Classic and Sincere, is that type of filicide, where the adoptive parents, Trezell and Jacqueline West, who have recently been convicted of murder of Orrin, not of Orson, but of Orrin, because one of the children, the other children in the house, actually saw Orrin dead, whereas with Orson, they just don't know what happened to him. No, there was no witnesses or anything. I think he was murdered, but they just didn't want these kids. They didn't want them. And they wanted to carry on taking their money for them, though. And then we get to the case of spousal revenge. And this category is horrific. And they kill their children, not because they hate them, not because they're angry and their overzealous discipline gets far too extreme and that child ends up dying. They want to make their spouse suffer. And in this case, Chad Doman's case, I think we're going to find out that Chad was a good dad. And I think we're going to find out that the relationship between Chad and his wife was ailing. It was suffering. And I can only speculate on what happened immediately before those murders. Now, it has been said, it's come out in the media from apparently what Chad has said himself, that he planned this for 3 months, apparently. Now, his dad has said that he believes his son must have snapped and there must be something deeply seated really wrong. And yes, there must be. I really think that Chad's wife, the little boy's mother, was going to take the kids, or at least he feared she was going to take the kids. And they were in the process of splitting up. And rather than her taking primary custody of these kids, he couldn't bear that. And he plotted revenge. And even though he was a good dad, he took this ultimate punishment towards the children, not because he hated them, but because he couldn't stand the fact that his wife was going to take custody of them. And that for me is just the ultimate in just sad, just really sad, pointless death. In this instance, 3 little boys aged 3, 4 and 7 who look very well looked after, look very happy, and they've had their lives snuffed out. Chad cried at his bond hearing. Crocodile tears, yeah. But I think he is now. He's back down to earth and he fully realises the scope of what he's done. I think he is crying for himself, but he's also crying for those boys. But it's just selfish revenge. He's destroyed his son's lives. He's destroyed his own life. He's done what he planned to do. And maybe that's why he was so calm. He's done what he planned to do. And destroyed his wife's life as well. Awful. Absolutely awful. And these cases will continue to happen. Some cases, of course, we can predict them. We can see the warning signs. And it's up to everyone to be vigilant, to act. If you see it and you're concerned about it, report it. Sometimes, even when these cases are reported multiple times, nothing is done. And the warning signs were all there. But in cases like this one, I don't know that there were any. I don't know that there were any warning signs. And that, my friends, is terrifying. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.